So if you're looking for a new camera or can't make a decision on a certain camera, if it's going to work with a camera that you already own or you're stepping up from another camera line, I wanted to talk about this specific camera. So let's get into it. Obviously, there's a few videos already out there about this camera, the FX3, and why I decided to go with this camera and skip on the Blackmagic 6K Pro. Now, I was kind of in the middle of thinking to myself, do I need a 6K Pro? Is it time to upgrade from the 6K? I actually decided to sell my 6K, and here's the reasons why. I already stepped up to the cinema camera, which is the Ursa G2, and I felt like that did exactly all the things that I wanted the 6K to do, and I really wanted kind of a handheld backup camera, which was that. Now obviously they solved the problems with the battery life, but there were so many ongoing issues going on just across YouTube and just reading up on the camera. Wanted to see how that kind of unfolded before things went a little too far. The one thing is, I've come from a Sony background. I've used Sonys for a long time and I really like their camera. They're tried and true. They don't kind of break down. There isn't software issues. There's little issues here and there, but you know what you're getting and the reliability is there. So that being said, I'm not trying to dump on Blackmagic. I think they're great cameras and you're not going to get an image like you get out of the 6K or the Ursa or any of the Blackmagic cameras that are out there. I think their image is fantastic and they can't be beaten for that price range. But that being said, there's some things that I did miss as a second camera, and it's the autofocus. So a lot of the jobs that I take on, a lot of the projects that I work on is, you know, relying on me. Basically, I have to nail everything. So if you've been on productions, you know, if you're behind the camera, if you're directing, if you're doing everything from art department, directing, casting, all the stuff that happens, you know, while you're trying to get a project done, it gets a little difficult to try to get your hands on everything and make sure that everything's right when it comes to audio and focusing and everything else. Sometimes you do make mistakes. I needed that backup camera, A, to be a B camera for great B-roll. The problem that I had with the previous Sony cameras with the A7S II, I never went with the A7S III, but the problems I had with the A7S II was it's an 8-bit camera. A7 III is also an 8-bit camera as well. Now that it's 10-bit, I'm really jazzed about it. So I ended up picking up this camera and honestly, I don't regret it one bit. Now, to call it cinema line might be a little far-fetched, a little bit of a marketing you know, thing going on here, but the image is fantastic for sure. And you can get it up in line and make it look as great as it possibly can, just like you do with other cameras. This camera coming with the audio handle I think is going to be great because if you have to do a run and gun, it's a really easy setup. Like right now I'm using the A7 III and I have my audio mixer here pulling in the audio. Because the input from the camera itself is not great, it's doable, you can make it work. I actually have an A box that I use from Wooden Camera and you can actually hook it direct into camera with XLR. But right now I'm using my audio sound device, which is great and it does a great job doing that. But most of the time if I want to pack light and do quick run and gun situations, it doesn't work that way. So having the handle I think is a great deal. As far as the price goes, again, everybody's talked about it. It makes a lot of sense if you get it with the handle, which is great and that's what it comes with. If you end up buying it for the A7 III, the S3, then, you know, again, it's, you know, dollar for dollar, you're still getting a good value. But the camera itself is really, really nice. Looking at this camera just as a camera alone here, you can still build it up to be a little bit of a little monster rig here, which is great. Still keep it light and everything else that goes along with it. All the stuff that worked with my Blackmagic 6K works on here. As far as power goes, this runs for 2.5 hours to 3 hours depending on how I'm using the camera, which is more than enough on one battery, and these batteries are small and light. What I really liked about this camera is the fact that it was a smaller, kind of boxier looking camera, which I really liked about it. So aesthetically I liked it. I love the fact that they have it very video centric features as far as the record button and how the layouts are with this particular camera. So, you know, mounting all these things on here, cageless, actually works really, really well with the way that the things are. I'm not a big fan of these flip out screens that go there. I'm not really using this to vlog that much, so that never really was a problem for me. You can rig this out and it can still do a really great job on production, whether you want to use manual lenses or obviously use the autofocus when using it on gimbals. The quality and the look of this camera colors are amazing. There are drawbacks to this camera. There's certain things that they've done here that I just don't get. I feel like the flip out screen's a little flimsy for what it is. And just to give you a quick idea as far as like photos, if you're interested, it takes really great photos. And now with Photoshop Enhanced, you can blow up your photos so a 12 megapixel photo can be double that size. So I think you're still winning there. You're still getting a photo camera. Now breaking this camera to its smallest format, all I did was added a NATO rail up here. Now obviously it comes with the built-in system where you can hook up your mic and the XLRs, which is really great. But if I want to just kind of do a small kind of run and gun, this would be my go-to kind of situation. As you can see, there's no cage here. Although I think a cage would be great on this, it just gives you more options. There's a few things here a little weird, the way that they set up these there's 3/4 20s up top. I wish they would have spaced it out a little bit differently so I can use two different ways of doing things. Like I can put this on, you know, without having to take this NATO rail on. And that would have been great because that just hooks on like that and I'm good to go. But in order for me now to use the sound stuff, this needs to come apart, and I'll show you what that looks like, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's fully built on with extra power and everything else. Some optional ideas for you. So let's start here with the handle. I think the handle is made extremely well. Having the XLRs on here really make it easy. It really, the audio out of here is actually really, really good. Like surprisingly good, better than I thought that it would be. It does have a limiter on there, all the proper things that you would need just to kind of, run and go, or even hook up a boom mic outside and then do it that way, which is totally fine as well. These 1/4-20s, like again, on this side here, not sure why they put it on here considering the HDMI, and I'll show you what the connections look like here on the side. I don't know why they put that there. It's just, nothing's going to be on there that's going to be helpful, and it's going to end up smashing against your HDMI unless there's something coming out that's going to be like something to hold the HDMI from moving in and out. Haven't seen anything yet, but we'll see. You've got your typical connections that you need here. You're going to have some audio in, which is an extra audio if you don't have the unit there, so it's not like you've lost anything. You do have a USB-C and then a multi-port adapter here as well. And this is where the fan is coming from the right here. Just to protect this, I always like to have, this on here, there, just to protect the camera, which is always a good idea. I've done that in the past with my other cameras as well. So the electronics doesn't get messed up by water, dust, or anything else. Keeps it nice and clean. All right, so let's get into just the top level here. So these are the buttons that you have here. You can obviously reprogram some of these guys, but let's start with the ISO button. You click that, you get instant ISO, see where you're at. White balance, really easy to reach there. What's kind of cool about this, you can actually zoom in with your lenses that you have, but you do lose tracking when you do that with these type of lenses. Now I think these were more built for these like cinema lenses that are going to zoom, have an actual zoom that actually works that way. But this kind of takes over that whole 35 sensor situation that you would have had with the A7 III or the A7S II. So there is no more Super 35 mode. This is pretty much it here. You would use that to kind of do a digital zoom. You've got another 1/4-20 here. Locking mechanism here is really nice. It was funny because when I first got this, I was trying to open it like out, but I didn't realize that it just slides out. So keep that in mind. It's just a little different than some of the other cameras. So now, if for any other reason I wanted to add a V-mount situation, power this through USB-C, I can. This actually came from my Zhiyun Crane 3S, and I hook it up right to the 1/4-20 here. I'll show you what that looks like. And what's cool about this is now I could take one of these kind of smaller batteries and power this thing on pretty much all day. Wire this through, give it USB power, I'm good to go. Or what I can do is I can actually use the battery that came with the crane that I'm not using. Pop that in there, nice and snug. Here we go, USB-C to USB-C, and this can power the camera literally as long as I want to. So, I mean, it's just an option. I think it's overkill, but just to give you an idea of what you can do with this with this thing here. And again, I think the quality of the camera is really great, really reliable. I think it's a solid choice if you wanted to build yourself a little cinema kit. I think this is going to be ideal for a run and gun interview situation, B-roll, or anything that you're going to need some autofocus on the fly, or just need a small, simple setup. Again, if you're familiar with the A7S III, great camera, same guts, same everything. You know, again, like the boxier style of this, like the fact that the viewfinder is not there because it gives me more room to mount this and keep this nice and small. Overall, extremely happy with this decision. I hope they work out the kinks with the Blackmagic 6K Pro, come up with some solution there, or fix some of their quality control. Then I'll be back on that. But right now, I don't need another cinema camera, being that I have the Ursa. Now, having the Ursa as a cinema camera is really answered and ticked all the boxes for me as far as a production camera goes. The Blackmagic 6K was a great camera, and it was production ready and good to go, and the images were beautiful. There were some kinks that needed to be worked out. Unfortunately, the 6K Pro obviously has some more kinks that need to be worked out, but to be honest, for the price, you're still getting an amazing camera, and you cannot beat the image. Even with this camera as well, I think it's a great camera. You know, image-wise, I think we can get it close, but it's different. Working with RAW, you know, once you work with RAW and you get used to it, and there's nothing, you know, there's nothing like it, to be honest. I'm gonna play around more with S-Log3. I never felt really comfortable with S-Log3 in the previous Sony cameras, so hopefully this may change the game a little bit, but I'll follow up on that. But again, having this camera is my main kind of production camera, using this on a more run and gun kind of easy setup, so I don't have to carry a ton of gear with me. I think has been a great solution. So if you guys have any questions about this camera, or are indecisive about what camera you may want to upgrade to, and you know, ask what this camera and who this camera is for, I would say if you're coming from the A7 III or the A7S II, I say jump on this camera. If you're not using it as much for photography and you don't use the viewfinder, I think the boxier setup helps a little bit. I do like the fact that you don't need a cage, but I can see this camera with a cage either way. Love the features that it has in it. Love the full HDMI. Wish it had SDI, but again, this is a hybrid camera. I don't truly think it's a cinema camera, but the image is fantastic. You want a true cinema camera, you may want to go with something like this, or, you know, it depends on your needs. But this camera is an amazing camera. The bottom line, what it comes down to, is the ability to be flexible. Now, this camera is great, but it's hard to be super flexible with this. I mainly shoot on sticks with this camera, or some sort of, you know, dolly system or something like that, or an easy rig, or anything that's going to kind of help me deal with the weight issue here. But the image and all the functionality and all the things that this brings to the table, you can't beat it on a production. You really can't. And for the price, it's an amazing camera, and I wouldn't, you know, switch it for anything at the cost that I paid for this camera. This camera is not cheap. It's already kind of up there. It's probably $1,500 less than this camera, but it gives me the ability to be able to kind of run and gun with this camera. I missed that. I missed having that autofocus. I missed having that superb image. You know, again, you lose some things with it, but it gave me the flexibility to be more creative. And the reality is, that's what it's about. It's a tool. And this is what the tool that I needed to use for, so this works for me now. So thanks again for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.